Born the son of Zeus, king of the Olympian gods, and Hera, queen of Olympus, Ares inherited all of the fire and fury that came with his divine title of God of War. From the moment he could walk, Ares was the embodiment of conflict, thriving on the clash of steel and the cries of battle. Unlike his half-sister Athena, who sought victory through strategy and wisdom, Ares reveled in the chaos itself. To him, war was not a grim necessity, but the purest expression of existence, a crucible where the strong asserted their will and the weak were crushed. Even in the early days, Ares' ambitions were stretched far beyond the gilded palaces of Olympus. He saw mortals not as fragile creatures in need of divine guidance, but as pawns, armies to be rallied, manipulated, and thrown into fires of his endless campaigns. On Olympus, Ares quickly carved a reputation for himself. The gods knew that in times of war, his power swelled, his influence spreading like wildfire across mortal and divine realms alike. But his unrelenting hunger for bloodshed and dominance often put him at odds with his family, especially Athena, whose ideals clashed with his every instinct. Ares thought her brand of war was cold and calculating, stripping away the thrill of the fight, while Athena thought he was reckless, wasteful, and needlessly cruel. This rivalry was more than just siblings arguing, it was the eternal philosophical divide between mind and the fist. Where other gods might have blessed their followers with prosperity or protection, Ares offered them the gift of glorious struggle and the promise of victory, only if they were willing to bleed for it. It was a bargain many took without hesitation, ensuring that his name echoed on the battlefields across the ancient world. Yet for all of his swagger and brutality, Ares was no mere brute. He understood the mechanics of power as well as any politician on Olympus. Fear was a weapon, loyalty a currency, and war was the most profitable venture in existence. His cunning was often overshadowed by his love for direct confrontation, but beneath the clang of armor and roar of combat, Ares played a long game. Even in his youth, he was not content to be just another Olympian deity. He intended to be the force that defined them all. As the god of war, Ares' abilities are as formidable as his ego. His divine nature grants him his immortality, rendering him immune to the ravages of time, disease, and mortal injury. In battle, he possesses superhuman strength, capable of matching even the most powerful Olympians, with stamina and endurance that allow him to wage war for days without faltering. His speed and reflexes, though often overshadowed by his raw power, are equally superhuman, enabling him to move and strike with lethal precision. Ares is also a master of war in all of its forms, both ancient and modern. His skill with weapons is also unparalleled. He can wield swords, spears, axes, and bows with the ease of someone who has done it for millennia. Yet he isn't bound by the limitations of a single era. Ares is just as deadly with firearms and explosives. His combat style blends sheer physical might with centuries of tactical refinement, making him as dangerous in single combat as he is commanding an army. His divine portfolio also gives him a unique form of supernatural influence, the ability to incite conflict and stir the bloodlust of mortals. In his presence, warriors fight harder, leaders make rash decisions, and tensions erupt into violence. Ares can subtly implant mistrust, hatred, and ambition, turning allies into enemies without ever lifting a blade. He thrives on the chaos these manipulations create, drawing the power from every battle, skirmish, or war that his influence touches. Beyond the battle, Ares possesses vast knowledge of military history, strategy, and psychology. He understands not just how to win a war, but to how to ensure it leaves a lasting mark on cultures and civilizations. This intellect makes him more than just a force of destruction. He's a sculptor of history, molding empires and destinies through the steady drumbeat of conflict. To underestimate him as a mere brawler is to fall into the very trap he wants you to. His earliest appearances in the DC Comics cast him firmly as an Olympian antagonist, first stirring trouble among his fellow deities before turning his gaze toward the mortal realm. Seeing the rise of humanity as both a threat to his authority and an opportunity to create endless battlefields, he began fostering wars among men, feeding on the chaos and slowly strengthening his influence in the world beyond Olympus. These initial moves established him as a shadowy presence behind the bloodiest pages of history, waging war not through armies of his own, but through the armies of others. One of his most defining early confrontations came when he set his sights on Themyscira, the home of the Amazons. The warrior women favored by Athena stood in direct opposition to his ideals. Ares saw their society as an affront to the very nature of war, and their existence as a threat to his influence over the mortal world. These hostilities would eventually lead him to go face to face with Diana. Ares viewed her as Athena's champion and a dangerous obstacle, and his earliest attempts to crush her involved grand, world-threatening plans that exploited political unrest, manipulated powerful leaders, and even sought to turn the Amazons themselves into instruments of destruction. In these initial battles with Wonder Woman, Ares frequently acted as a master manipulator rather than a direct combatant. He orchestrated conflicts between nations, exploited nuclear fears, and positioned himself so that any resolution would still feed his power, whether through bloodshed or through the lingering tension that followed. These confrontations cemented him as more of a cerebral foe than many of Diana's enemies, wielding both supernatural might and the very human tendencies toward fear and violence. There was even a moment where Ares' schemes forced Wonder Woman into an impossible moral choice, to either strike him down to prevent a catastrophic war, or to find another way to end the conflict without succumbing to the very violence he thrived upon. After his early campaigns against Wonder Woman and the Amazons, Ares entered a more complex phase of his existence, one marked by reinvention, uneasy alliances, and moments that blurred the lines between enemy and reluctant ally. His defeats at Diana's hands did little to curb his ambitions. Instead, they pushed him towards more subtle and more elaborate schemes. Recognizing that brute force alone would not sway the modern world, he began adapting to the shifting nature of warfare. In an age where bombs and politics often replaced spears and swords, Ares expanded his influence into arms dealing, organized crime, and even corporate fronts, using mortal systems to cultivate the conflicts he craved. At times, Ares' relationship with Wonder Woman shifted from direct hostility to something more tangled. Certain interpretations showed him offering her cryptic guidance or testing her resolve, less out of benevolence and more to see if she could be swayed toward his worldview. There were rare moments when greater threats to Olympus or the mortal realm forced him into reluctant alliances with her. Never without tension, as trust was a luxury neither afforded the other. Yet these uneasy truces revealed something deeper. Ares recognized Diana as one of the few beings who could truly challenge him, not just on the battlefield, but in the realm of ideals. He also underwent significant transformations, both in role and in form. In some storylines, Ares was stripped of his divine stature. He was forced into mortal guise or diminished in power due to the changes in the pantheon. These moments often fueled his hunger to reclaim former glory, leading him down increasingly dangerous paths. In some interpretations, Ares' story took an unexpected turn. Certain depictions explored the idea that even a god of war could tire of his own endless cycle, pondering whether there might be more to his existence than perpetual conflict. In those rare moments of vulnerability, Ares became something more than a villain. He became a tragic figure trapped in the role destiny had written for him, unable or unwilling to step beyond it. His ruthless philosophy forces both heroes and readers to confront an uncomfortable question. Is peace truly the absence of conflict, or merely a temporary truce between the inevitable battles? Does this strength come from harmony or come from surviving the crucible of war? His importance lies in his dual role as both destroyer and teacher. Every scheme, every manipulation, every sword raised in his name is a test, not just for Diana, but for the mortal world itself. Ares challenges heroes to prove that compassion can triumph without becoming weakness, and that justice can endure without descending into vengeance. Even in his defeats, he leaves behind a reminder that vigilance is the price of peace, for conflict does not vanish simply because it is unwanted. The lessons Ares offers are paradoxical yet vital. From him, we learn that the unchecked aggression corrodes even the most noble cause, but we also learn that struggle, when fought with purpose, can forge resilience and clarity. In opposing him, Wonder Woman affirms that the truest victories are those won without surrendering one's ideals. He doesn't fall, and he's never truly gone. He waits, in the silence between screams, in the breath before a blade is drawn. Empires may rise and heroes may triumph, but war is a cycle etched into the bones of the world. And when it begins again, Ares will be there, not as a shadow, but as its fire.